We are back for another Choose a Career segment, and today we're going to be talking about the FAA, and we are here with Mr. Melton. Now, first of all, for all the freshmen who might be out there, what is the FAA?
Federal Aviation Administration.
So everything dealing with the air, basically.
Correct.
All right. So if you're interested in being a part of the FAA, tell us some of the various jobs that are involved with the FAA.
So the FAA is made up of 45,000 employees. Under the air traffic control, which my field is, there's about 15,000. 15,000 air traffic controllers. That includes supervisors, managers, and controllers themselves. The main part about becoming an air traffic controller is that's the task. That's the task. We are recruiting, and we were hiring 1,000 a year. Right now, we're going to move that up to about 1,800 a year to take away from the attrition where we're losing people through retirement and things of that nature.
This is traditionally considered a fairly high pressure job.
So air traffic controllers really have our mandate is safety, right? And anytime you're dealing with safety, there's an added pressure. But now this safety is dealing with people's lives. You have people's lives in your hand every day as controlling airplanes from one place to another. You want to make sure that they get their safety. And there are rules that we have to apply. And anybody can read a rule, but applying that rule sometimes can be difficult. And that's the stressful part of it.
Right. How many planes at any one time are over the Memphis skies?
Well, over the Memphis skies, you have to look at it from a district perspective, but over the Memphis skies, I would say that could be easily 1,000 planes over the area. And that could be from the ground surface all the way up.
Sure, sure. But you've got to manage that's a lot of different things to manage, a lot of different people, a lot of different types of planes, because we're not just talking about commercial, we're obviously talking about FedEx, and then there's tons of little private planes that are constantly buzzing around as well.
Correct. And I would say that area, for the Memphis area, it spanned all the way out west of Little Rock and just Nashville and all those planes, and we have that responsibility in making sure that they land safely and as it relates from our part of it. And then of course the pilot has his job to do to make sure they land safely. Now, who has the most stress? I would say the pilot will have the most stress as it relates to, because he's sitting right there with the people in himself. This
may still be the case, but air traffic controllers had not only a digital platform in which they managed the air, but they also had some fairly analog ways that they managed. It seemed like back then it was strips. Can you explain some of how the actual management of all those planes happens?
So we have come a long way. Prior to the invention of radar, they had tools that they use as well, what they call little shrimp boats, and they just move it across the platform.
Right.
But now everything is electronic, right? And in the electronic portion of it, you have what you can see on the scope. You can see exactly where the aircraft is located, right? That aircraft has a beacon system where he's telling me that this is this particular aircraft. Say, for instance, it was a Delta call sign with Delta 498. He's telling me his altitude is displayed on my scope. He's telling me his speed is displayed on my scope. And all that is done electronically. Now, as it relates to pre-planning, we do still use those flight progress strips, or what we call them. And that flight progress strip gives us the aircraft call sign, the computer identification number. It also gives us the projected speed and what we call a beacon code. It's a 4-digit code. And that code comes from the aircraft, and the computer recognizes that code and it displays it on the scope. But it also gives us his altitude he's requesting, or his altitude he's at, and his departure point and his destination. So it's a lot of information there. We process that information, we correlate it on the scope, and we know who that particular aircraft. Now, we need to make some changes on the aircraft flight. We have a computer, we make that change based on that computer identification number, and it changes his destination, his altitude, and things of that nature.
Okay. Are there multiple people in a tower? Are those planes handed off for different jobs? Is there somebody following the plane into the Memphis area, and then somebody else is actually in charge of landing those planes on the airstrip.
So let's talk about it. So in Memphis, we have 3 facilities. Most people are unaware of that. The first facility is the tower.
Right.
It controls about a 5-mile radius around the tower. Right. Then the next one, which is also located at the airport, is called a TRACON. And TRACON stands for Terminal Radar Approach Control.
Okay.
And it controls about a 30-mile radius around Memphis.
So as you keep breaking into those different zones, you're passed off to somebody else.
Right. So when an aircraft get ready to take off, he get his clearance, clear for takeoff, and the tower finished with his coordination, he tell them to contact Memphis TRACON, right? Memphis Approach Control, what they call it, and then he goes over to Memphis Approach Control. Memphis work them out 30 miles. Then if they keep going and climbing higher, Memphis Center, which is located on Democrat, actually works those airplanes, and they hand them off depending on which direction. There are 22 en route facilities in the National Airspace System. If they're going east, they go and talk to Atlanta Center. If they're going west, they talk to Dallas. They're going south, they talk to Houston. And they're going north, they talk to Indianapolis Center or northwest Kansas City. And then, of course, depending on where the airplane is going and what airspace it would transverse.
Okay, so as they break another airspace, even if they're going over Atlanta, somewhere else, Atlanta's going to pick them up and know and have an eye on where they're at.
Right, because there's a computer identification number that airplane is squawking those 4-digit code, which you call a beacon code. And that beacon code is telling the computer, hey, this is that guy, right? But prior to that, Memphis Center is actually doing an automation handoff where they slew to the aircraft and hand it off to Atlanta. Now Atlanta Center get the call sign and they start flashing. Hey, there's that guy right there. They identify him. They give him the information. And if he's going on to Miami, he will work him down through Jacksonville on down to Miami because they're another en route facility. And then when they get to their destination, they pretty much do it in reverse. Right. They hand them off to the approach control. And then the approach control clear them for the approach, and then they hand them off to the tower, and the tower cleared them to land.
Got you. Now, there's multiple ways. There's really 2 ways that I've heard of people getting into this career. Number 1 would be a civilian, which I'm going to ask you about how students are able to do that. And then obviously some people end up going the military route. And then after they get done with their military career, they end up as air traffic controllers as well. What if a student is not wanting to go the military route, if they want to get into the FAA as a career, how would you suggest they go about doing that? So
there's 2 requirements for hiring what we call a person off the street hire, what we call it. They either have 3 years of work experience, general work experience,
okay,
or a college degree.
Okay.
Now, it always helps if that college degree is in some form of aviation background, whether it's airfield management, whether it's aviation management, one of those. Now, there are schools out there that everybody do not have that type of program. So you have to do the research, figure out what schools have that. I know Delta State has one. I know Middle Tennessee State University have one. And the FAA, who just partnered with some HBCU schools, historical black colleges and universities, to have also an aviation field where students can come and apply. Now, just because we're talking air traffic control, there are a multitude of jobs in it,
right,
in the FAA.
Okay, so tell us, I mean, there's clerical, I'm assuming?
Right, there's clerical, there is technicians. Those technicians are responsible for maintaining the equipment that the air traffic controllers use. We as the air traffic controller can do our job without the equipment.
Right.
Then the agency even have attorneys. Right. They have attorneys. They have.
Do y'all do inspections? I'm assuming you
yes,
do
inspections. There is a Flight Standard District Office. There are people who do inspections, and most of those people have some type of aviation background as it relates to being a pilot. So they know how to do and conduct those inspections. So a lot of times people, what type of qualification do I need to be an air traffic controller? Well, the main qualification is someone that thinks logical, because at one point there was a 68% washout rate. That means that people went to the academy, and you go to Oklahoma City for your training, and 68% of the people were not
Didn't make
successful. Right. And everybody's not cut out to do the job, but it's a very rewarding job. I got 35 years in, right? Most people don't work on a career of 35 years, especially of a job of this magnitude. And I don't think there's nothing else I'd rather done, because being an air traffic controller, you're a small microcosm of the United States, but I can say that's something that I was successful at and did well at, and I would say that it is a very rewarding career.
All right. Some students are gonna probably wonder. We ask about pay scale, and that's going to differ greatly depending on what part of the country you're actually working in. But around Memphis, an air traffic controller could expect to make what starting out about? I know you can't give exact figures, but
so what
neighborhood.
What I would like to say, when they become an air traffic controller, they're certified, because you don't want to look at what are they getting paid while in training. But
Right.
once they get certified, and that varies according to which facility you're working at.
Sure.
You can be at one of the two facilities here on the airport grounds. In 3 years, you could be easily making $100,000. And
That's a considerable salary for the Mid-South.
yes, and then on Democrat, you can easily be making $140,000. That takes longer to get certified.
Sure.
But you can be making $140,000, and just multiply that over a career, right?
Insane.
Yes, and I would say the most positive thing about it, everybody wants this job, they're making a lot of money now, but look at it over a long period of time of a career. And then not only that, the great pension at the end.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of people working jobs, they don't have a pension. Once they retire, they either what they done saved up, that's it, or they waiting on Social Security, and we don't know how long that'll be around.
Right.
But when you're working for the federal government, at the end of the day, you call it.
They do reward a good pension system.
Yes, and so I'm going to be retiring soon, and when that happens, my estimate would be like 120 a year for the rest of my life.
Right.
So.
Right. And for those of you who heard $100,000, $140,000, let's stress now, these are for people who are very highly skilled and have worked really hard to get into those jobs. And each and every one of you can absolutely do it, but just know it's going to be a good amount of work to get to that position and have those skills. And that's why you're rewarded with such a great salary. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us.